SFAR. My name is Patrick Gardner, and I'm your 2021 Education and Events Chair. Thank you for joining us today with a special program. Let's see, I want to see how many people we have in. Oh, excellent. We have quite a number of people signed in to view today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Patrick Gardner, and I am your 2021 SFAR Chair for Education and Events from Guarantee Mortgage. And on behalf of the committee, I'd like to welcome you to our timely discussion on listing safety and protecting yourself and your client's property. Before we get started, I'd like to briefly remind everyone of our webinar practices. All Zoom audience viewers are on mute throughout the presentation, so please try to refrain from using the chat feature to carry on side conversations. It may distract from presenters. If you have questions, please put them through the Q&A portal at the bottom there. We'll try to get to all your posted questions throughout the session, so we make sure to answer them live. As a reminder, our presentation will be recorded and may be viewed on the SFAR social YouTube channel with a variety of other Zoom webinars we have done over the past few years. There's quite a collection of videos and topics there, so use that library usefully. Our discussion today is not intended to scare agents into profiling potential buyers who walk through open house doors or create a level of paranoia or anxiousness. Instead, it's an opportunity to have a pragmatic and candid conversation about the realities and vulnerabilities of being a real estate agent. Today, we are sitting down in conversation with two guests who will provide our audience with perspective and information that will be key in maintaining awareness and vigilance in preventing crime. To start, I'd like to briefly go over our program outline, and then we can get started. Our first guest is a member of SFAR. Her name is Kelly Kwan. She'll be speaking on an incident that occurred when she was holding an open house. Kelly will be talking with us for about 20 minutes with a Q&A to follow. After that, we will be welcoming Deputy Chief Lazar from the San Francisco Police Department to speak for about an hour with a short question and answer period to follow. Deputy Chief will be sharing a number of insights, including best practices in reporting, updates on city crime statistics, and measures agents and the public can take to prevent crime. Our first speaker, Kelly, would you join us? Our first speaker, Kelly Kwan, is a second-generation San Franciscan. She's got about 6.5, 7 years in real estate with Corcoran Global Living. And prior to that, she worked in retail and office management. Kelly has been thoughtful enough and brave enough to share her story of being in an armed robbery at an open house back in 2018. Leading up to today in discussions with Kelly, it was determined that, or we determined between her and I, that the crime that took place against her was one of opportunity and not necessarily a planned effort prior. Criminal acts can both be planned or opportunistic, and in Kelly's case, it was one of opportunity. Kelly, if you would just provide us with kind of an overview of what occurred on that day with your incident.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks everybody for joining. It was actually, we had an open house, I had an open house, and it was actually after the open house stated time by about 15 minutes. I actually had the garage door open to the property again, because it's difficult to have parking around that particular area. And I believe that the garage door and it being open was visible from a street below. And I had a lot of open house signs out, 10 spread out very far. And I just think that, this is my own perception. They saw the open house signs, drove towards the property and just ran through the garage. I actually, obviously, it was a townhouse. I was in the middle level, ready to greet buyers, heard these people running up the stairs, and actually thought, oh, wow, these buyers are very excited to see this property. And was very excited to greet them. And when the first person got to the top step, I already saw that a gun was drawn and pointed towards me, directly at me, and that there were two other individuals behind him. Initially, I actually thought it was a joke. I thought maybe one of my friends was playing a joke on me, but quickly realized within about a nanosecond that no, this was for real. So then from that point on, I kicked into gear mentally regarding, okay, what do I need to do to ensure that I'm able to get out of the situation safely? I assessed the situation very quickly, realizing that I'm operating on a couple of different unknowns. Which one was, are they on drugs? And do they mean to do me harm, or do they just want something like money? So the goal was to do whatever they said and to keep calm and to keep the temperature, as in temperature meaning, not getting them upset or freaked out, to keep it as low as possible, again, because a gun was being pointed towards me. Anyway, so moving forward, they asked for my money. And again, to ensure that they felt okay with what I was going to do, I told them where my purse was and that I would have to go get it, and moved very slowly towards it, which I think was important, not to do any quick false moves. However, as soon as I took the first step, the person with the gun actually ran up behind me and put the gun up against my back. So at that moment, I realized that, wow, this is a game changer. I have a gun up against my back, and any particular thing that I do could, who knows, set him off. So everything was about communicating to the suspects what I was going to do, that I was now going to take out my wallet. I took out my wallet slowly to show them that I was pulling all the cash out and handed it over to them. And then they were not happy with the amount of cash that I had, which was like $42, and proceeded to rummage through my purse to look for more. However, I knew there was no more in there. And at that juncture, thinking about my own safety again, I contemplated and actually started to remove the ring on my finger, and was going to give that away with my earrings as well. Because at that point, all I cared about was getting out of there safely. However, I was saved by the bell. It was a late buyer that rang the doorbell, and then the three suspects ran off. And there you have it.
Wow, that's a lot and very, I think, well succinctly put in your story. I'm sure you probably had to relive it a couple different times on various occasions. Um, just quickly, like, what made you realize that you needed to, cooperate, or, like, I know, myself, I might think, oh, should I be a hero here? What should I do? What was it, just like an internal instinct that you said to yourself, like, okay, I need to take care of, myself? I mean, clearly you weren't in a position where you were trying to defend the property or anything like that.
Right. Well, the thing is, when you have a gun pointed at you directly, and the person is literally 5 feet away from you, less than that, and the gun is pointed at your chest, I think, yeah, it was instinctual. It was instinctual for me to realize that the goal was to keep them calm because there's a gun pointed, and I had to assume, I did assume, what if they're on drugs? Okay, so people who are on drugs can be very, they could have a very volatile type of whatever demeanor. Anything can set them off. Drugs can change how somebody is rational, and so I assume that they may be on drugs. So how do I protect myself? So I actually, even when I spoke to them, I spoke in a softer voice, um, to keep everything calm. It was about keeping everything very even keel so that they wouldn't feel threatened. I think I don't know why I know all this. I just know that sometimes when criminals are threatened, they feel that they're threatened, then they start doing strange things. And so I needed them to feel like that I was not threatening to them, and that I was just going to do whatever they wanted. Because if you have a gun pointed at you, there's really nothing else you can do. You just want to make sure that they don't feel like they need to use that weapon on you.
Understood. Well, you and I had a couple discussions leading up to this, and there were kind of some key points that we thought, were good to share. One was, just the vulnerability of agents in an open house. I mean, we live in an open society, and the open house is about as open in the open society as you can get. You're inviting strangers into a space with yourself, and it sounds like on that day you were by yourself. You did not have a partner with you. That's I can't reiterate, the vulnerability piece. Someone who's out, inviting people in, there's all, sorts of things, as we know, in the community that can happen. So what are some kind of ideas that you would have to at least, have the situation that occurred maybe less likely to occur?
Well, for me, lessons learned was don't have your garage door open where potential suspects can easily come in. I definitely, especially after that, and currently now, as we know that the crime has increased in San Francisco, and I just actually had an open house, my first open houses this past weekend. I'm not putting out A-frames. I understand where A-frames came from back in the day, but really now, real buyers, serious buyers, are all getting, they know the address of the property. They're using their ways to get there, and so it really just serves more. To me personally, I feel like the A-frames are just kind of like a marketing sometimes to the wrong people to say, hey. I think the other thing about open houses, what happened to me after when I thought about it more is, in your own house, and we talked about this, Patrick, in your own house, there would never be a time where any of us in our own house would say, we're going to unlock all of our doors and we're just going to let people know that they can just come on in, and that we would literally have strangers that we have no idea who they are just come in. And that's basically what we're doing with open houses. We really have no idea who any of these people are. And when I worked in retail, the really smart criminals, they dressed in the appropriate attire. I mean, and so the smarter people are, they're not gonna look like, you know, so there's different levels. And I know that the deputy sheriff will also be speaking more to that you have different levels of criminals. And I just, I wanted to do this because I want agents to be aware and not just be like, oh, it's so exciting, we have open houses and we're just going to fling the doors open and not have plans in place. And so I think having plans, thinking of scenarios that may occur and thinking about it in advance is good for all agents to do. As many brokerages, even after my situation, they were really putting it out there, is to obviously not do open houses by yourself. But I would also say too, if you have someone else that's helping you, whether it's another agent or a lender, I mean, obviously the thing is, what happens often is, yeah, there's two people, but then they're standing together. They're standing together, possibly in the living room, or they're standing together inside the kitchen. And so that doesn't, in my case, if I had another person with me standing there, then now both of us have the gun pointed at us. And then now I have to be concerned, okay, the person next to me, I can't control how they react. I was able to control how I act and kind of temper the situation. And so if there are two people that are helping out for the open house, or potentially three, it's to really spread out. Um, and I would also recommend that if for some reason, because it's not always possible to have two people at the open house, that day that I was robbed, I tried, and everybody was busy. Everybody was either busy or they're out of town. So then in that case, depending on the property, it's to stand at the front door instead. You don't need to be in the center of the house. The buyers can go check it out themselves and come back out and ask questions. The other thing is, I also recommend, this again, I'm not an expert, it's just my own personal recommendations, is that for open houses, when you have another person working with you, or three people, is to have a safe word. And a safe word is where it's a word that you can either yell out or you can text to someone if there's something that makes you uneasy. And I'm not even talking about just crime per se. I mean, you could have, like, I hate to use the word weirdo, but I don't have a better word for that. Somebody that's a weirdo, somebody who's uncomfortable, is getting a little too close to you or whatever. And this way, if you have a safe word, you could just tell that person, oh, excuse me, I was expecting this really important text. I just have to reply. And then you can reply your safe word to the people in the property with you, and they could come over and help you. Um, if you're doing it alone, you should set up a buddy that is outside. So let somebody know, a loved one, a good friend, check in that you're now at the open house, and so that they know your whereabouts versus you just going to the open house and nobody knows what time you're getting there and what time you're leaving. Um,
Those are some great tips to lead into our question and answer session. We do have a couple of questions coming in. Michael Barnacle asked, I know you know him very well, if you had a handheld panic button, how do you think that would have played into the situation? He said he's just read about a product that sends a help message out to 4 numbers via text message. Is that something that you would have wanted, or would you have wanted to handle the situation kind of as you did?
well, it depends, without really knowing this panic button, and how that operates and who are the people it goes to. Let's just say, I mean, do we know who it goes to, Michael? Is it
Well,
like
I
going?
think it would be 4 numbers that you could designate. So it could be, your manager and, 2 other agents or a security service or whatever.
Yes, I think it would be helpful because at least you have additional people who could be, obviously not present there, in the throes of the situation, that can start doing things to try to help the situation, whether it's to contact the authorities and whatnot. It gets a little tricky, and again, our next guest speaker can speak more to that. When somebody is pointing a gun at you, these other 4 individuals, it would have to be that they also, let's just say it's my managers, right?
Yeah,
They would have to also be versed and experienced of different scenarios of the panic button, that when this panic button is engaged, what is it that they do
they do.
so that they do not end up putting that person, their agent,
More
in
in danger.
jeopardy and in more jeopardy.
Or themselves.
Or themselves, exactly. Yes.
All right. Another question from Dan Hershkowitz. It says we've been advising agents to work in teams with at least 2 people. You spoke earlier about some practices that you had changed. Any other tips beyond the team? I think you not only said to work in teams, but to work apart in teams in the listing. So that's definitely a value add there. Any other thoughts?
No, I think really the tips that I reviewed, I think are ones, at least for myself, that I've been practicing and I think is helpful for other agents to do. I really think the apart. I mean, I just remember all the open houses that I go to and broker tours. Everybody just like congregates, right? They just congregating, especially when there's food served back in the day. I call it back in the day, 2019. It's food in the kitchen. There's 5 agents. The door is flung open, and everybody just has this feeling of, I don't know if it's a naivete sometimes. It's just, you're just hanging out
Feel
and you
safe.
just don't, yeah, and you feel safe. You don't think like, oh, the door's open and somebody might happen to wander in. And it may not even be like a group of people. It could just even be, potentially a homeless person. And, most people are not versed on even how to really handle if the homeless person comes in and they happen to be on drugs. How do you even navigate, you know, the person off the property?
Yeah, and we were talking in our discussions too, that there's, lots of individuals who are either homeless or
Mhm,
having mental illness
mhm.
in the city, and, navigating, how to interact with them, in a
Mhm.
situation. Hey, maybe there's buyers there. Maybe it's not just
Mhm.
you. Maybe it's other
Mhm.
people that you're trying to keep safe as well. And, navigating that. Tanya Bolshakov would like to know if you called 911 after the incident, or what occurred like directly after.
Okay, this my managers know this. So this may sound crazy, but after the Saved by the Bell late buyers that rang the doorbell and was my saving grace, there were more buyers that came after them. So
Sell,
the
sell, sell.
no, so the first buyers, the first set of buyers, we had a long chat because they actually saw the suspects and they were really nice and wanted to know if I was okay, and we chatted. And then after we chatted, then they asked whether it was okay to see the property. So I said, of course, yes. And then there were two other sets of buyers that came, and I mean, and they were there, and I didn't want to burden them with like giving them, oh, I have to close, and they were already there. So I said, so I walked them through the property. I also was very acutely aware, as a matter of fact, in the middle of the situation, which probably sounds crazy, I had a thousand things going through my mind, was that, oh my gosh, this is going to become a disclosure item. And it was actually a very popular, it was doing really well. It was our last open house, and I thought, wow, all those interested buyers are going to drop off like flies. So there was a part of me was like, yes, I'm obviously going to call the police, but the buyers are already there. So then I let them, I gave them the tour.
Well,
And
I
then
mean,
I
that's,
called 911.
yeah, well, that's amazing, because I'm sure you had a lot of adrenaline, a lot of like emotional dump. You were probably in shock, like the fact that you were able to like stay, aware and to deliver on showings after that. That's a pretty amazing story. All right, well, I think we've gone through questions and gone through tips. And what I would like to do now is invite our, we had one more question from Maravik. She wanted to know if the suspects were apprehended after the fact.
No, and that's because I could not identify them. And that's sometimes the challenge, is that, if they weren't wearing like ski masks, but they were, all I could recall was that I could not see hair. So I think all three of them were wearing, some sort of a hat or whatever. And they did have their shirts over their nose.
Got it. Okay. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and invite into our discussion our second guest speaker today, Deputy Chief Lazar from the San Francisco Police Department. Deputy Chief Lazar earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Project Management from St. Mary's College. He is a graduate of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, State, and Local Executives course. During his career, the Deputy Chief has been assigned to 8 of 10 district stations. He's held numerous command positions, and he has worked in every neighborhood in San Francisco. Deputy Chief Lazar is a leader in community policing reform. He was a liaison and executive sponsor to the Department of Justice Collaborative Review Initiative on community policing and reform, and facilitated the SFPD's strategic plan on community policing. He was tasked with the responsibility of establishing the SFPD's Community Engagement Division. And in 2019, Deputy Chief Lazar directly oversaw the entire Investigations Bureau, which included all the SFPD's Crime Scene Investigations Unit and criminal investigators, the Crime Laboratory, and the Identification Bureau. In 2021, Deputy Chief Lazar was selected to lead the Field Operations Bureau, which includes all 10 SFPD district police stations and the department's Community Engagement Division. Deputy Chief Lazar is very honored to serve the citizens and community of his native city, San Francisco. Deputy Chief David Lazar, thank you for joining us today, and we very much welcome your dialogue and your communication here in regard to Kelly's incident first, and then I know you have a presentation that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick, and Kelly, and everyone that's on the line today. It's an honor to be here with the San Francisco Realtors. Ann McGee, who is one of our volunteers, member of our auxiliary law enforcement response team reached out. So I'm very, very grateful. Kelly, I thank you for sharing your story. Patrick, I thank you for the introduction. As mentioned, I'm Deputy Chief David Lazar. I'm in my 30th year in the San Francisco Police Department, born and raised here. I'm a homeowner here, raised my family here. But my other claim to fame, my big claim to fame is that when I was 20, I obtained my real estate license. And in my early 20s, I was a cop and a realtor. I was a police officer by night, and I was holding my open homes by day in my early 20s, and have always had a passion for real estate sales and all that. The license just kind of went to the side in my mid to late 20s, and I'm 50 now and have been in the department in my 30th year, as mentioned. So I get both sides, and I'm grateful for everything that everyone on this line does. And I think I could speak with knowledge of both your world and my world and what goes on in it. And as mentioned, last thing I'll say is mentioned by Patrick, I oversee the Field Operations Bureau. It's basically all of the uniformed officers in the city, about 1,200 police officers. So I have about half the department. And I thank you, Kelly, for sharing your story. And I listened intently as you described what happened. So Patrick, however you want to moderate it, or Kelly, or I'm ready.
Excellent. Well, I guess I'd like, and this is, more of a kind of a candid question to lead into this dialogue here is, from your, if you were going to give Kelly kind of a 1 out of 10 rating on her response to this incident, I mean, we won't talk about what she did after, showing the property. Hey, that's a 10 out of 10 for being an agent. Actually, that's 15 out of 10 for being an agent. But specifically, how she handled, the situation with the intruders and the armed robbery.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kelly, I hope you got over a listing price for that sale, because it was definitely worth every single dime that you had to earn there. But Kelly got 10 out of 10. And the reason being is because as I listened to her, hopefully she was as calm as she was describing the story. She was complied with what they requested. She realized that it's only property, whether it's something, jewelry or something that they wanted, yeah, give them what they want and get them out of there. And, I'm glad that, Kelly, you weren't injured, and I'm glad you were able to share your story. And I think your story is common. And I want to talk, when we're ready, I want to talk about what I've seen and what I suggest. And if I was a realtor again, what I would be doing and what I would be thinking about. So absolutely.
Kelly, do you have any questions for Deputy Chief Lazar?
I do. I guess maybe, obviously, the tips that I came up with is just from my own experience, tips for other agents. So, I look forward to hearing whether some of those things, make sense in the environment that we're in, as well as, sometimes it's not always possible to have a partner there with you. And so, I think it would be great to know tips, definitely, besides my own tips of what to do. You have to host an open house, and just how to be able to do our jobs well, but at the same time to stay safe.
Yes. In the last few days, I've been thinking a lot about it, because I do remember my time as a realtor and holding open homes, but I was a police officer, and I always had like a little firearm in my waistband and all that. So not everybody has that opportunity, but I remember the same types of things that you described. People would come in and you think to yourself, wow, I hope they don't take anything. And I'm kind of trapped in this house and things like that. And I thought about how when I was a brand new police officer in 1992, right out of the academy, I worked in the Nob Hill area. And one of the first calls I had was a realtor who was sexually assaulted, and she was holding an open home in a condominium. And this guy came in and locked the door. I mean, everybody's worst nightmare. And I was a young officer and had to take that report. And I remember thinking, wow, like this is horrible. So I say all that to say, Kelly, is the things you came up with are the things I was thinking about. And what I thought about when I was reflecting on it this weekend is there's really no reason that in the year 2021, as a realtor, it should be two people who facilitate an open home that's not by appointment only. Like if it's an appointment only, that's fine. You can be there, somebody's bringing their realtor with them, no problem. Or it's people etc. But if you're going to open up the home and you're going to put out A-frames, and even if you're not going to put out A-frames, you have to have a partner. And there can't be, in this day and age where, well, people are busy and they're not available. If I'm working in your office, Kelly, and I don't know what office you're in, but if I'm working in your office, I'm saying, hey, Kelly, will you be my partner? And I'll be your partner. Okay, everybody team up. The broker says everybody team up in two. And maybe I'm with you at your listing on Sundays, and then at some point you're with me at my listings on Sundays. And at least I know we're partnered up, and we operate like that in an office. So, if we're partnered up, it's going to send a message to those who want to commit crimes, whatever those crimes may be. Hey, they're organized. There's two of them here. They're watching everything. And then I would enact some procedures like saying, okay, Kelly, well, let's do it like this. Let's always be in eye contact, or let's be in, at least you can hear me, right? If I'm showing clients around, you're in the kitchen, I'm in a bedroom or something, that you can at least hear me. Let's have a safe word. Great idea. If I say something, that's red flags. If I say this butterfly word or whatever I say, right? And then also have a plan. Like, look, if it goes bad, this is what we're going to do. If we get robbed, this is how we're going to handle it. We're going to comply, but then we're going to call 911 right away. Or, if I say this word, run out of the house. If you hear me say this word, we have to run out of the house and call 911 because something bad is either observed, seen, or has happened. And for offices to really come up with security plans that they could educate all their realtors about, like, here is the standard safety protocol for having a broker's tour or open houses on the weekends. This is what we need to do, 2-person team, and here's a whole list of things in order to be safe. Because you're right, would you ever, would you ever advertise all over the neighborhood and then just open up your home and see who's going to come through and greet them in your kitchen and all that? It's the same thing. You need to have somebody with you. You can't make the excuse that everybody's busy and I have to do it by myself. I'm, as a police officer, I'm very adamant about that. I got a couple of other things for Kelly and for Patrick and for the group also. Let me talk about, may I talk about 911 for a minute? I know you waited because you got to make sure you're keeping things calm. And the last group through could have been the ones bringing in the offer over asking. But the reality is you got to call 911. And just to let everybody know how 911 works is that obviously you can call 911 from your cell phone. And, things you need to be thinking about is be as calm as possible, be as descriptive as possible. My name is David Lazar. I'm at this location. This is what has occurred. And what happens is those calls are answered centrally at 1011 Turk Street is our Department of Emergency Management, answered by civilian trained dispatchers. And what they're doing is they're making a decision. Okay, based on the circumstances, is this an A priority? Do I have to get the officers there within 5 minutes? Is it a B priority? Could it wait up to 20 minutes? So an A priority would be that robbery that in progress or just occurred, or a person has a weapon or something in progress, felony crime taking place. 5-minute response team on the average, 5-minute response on the average. Or 20 minutes, it just occurred, or it's a fight without weapons. It's a B priority. Or based on what you're telling them, it's a C priority, meaning that it could be up to an hour or longer. So for everyone listening in, you have to be very specific and let that dispatcher make a determination on how fast the police need to come. And then what happens, how we all get is we end up saying, well, just why are you asking me questions? Just send the police, goodbye. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. We have technology that allows in real time the dispatchers to send that to the officers, and the officers will be responding in real time while you're giving updates all along the way. Suspect description and direction of travel. Was there a vehicle? Was there a license plate? And they're getting that in real time. So you might as well just stay on the phone until the officers arrive for that in progress crime. So that's 911, and that's how it works. And sometimes people downplay things and then they wonder why it takes the police a long time to get there. The other thing is train up all your offices on being good observers and being good witnesses and being able to give good descriptions. You know, it's who, what, where, when, why, weapons, vehicles. It's descriptions head to toe. We're going to ask you like race, sex, height, weight, age, and then head to toe descriptions of the individuals, from hats to facial hair to tattoos to earrings, all the way down their clothing. And a lot of times they're going to change their clothing and they don't change their shoes. So what color shoes are they wearing? What kind of shoes are they wearing? And officers realize that. So those are just some of the things to think about. But yeah, each office should have a plan for open homes for sure.
Can I say a couple of things, Deputy Chief? I have
Please.
a question.
Mhm.
So I had kind of put my experience on, there is an open forum group just for SF realtors on Facebook. And when we started having the open houses, I felt like I needed to share my situation just to raise the awareness, because I didn't want everybody to be so exuberant about open houses and they're just like flinging the doors open and just throwing caution to the wind. And so this is how this actually came about, being asked to speak here. And so some of the things that I saw that people were commenting in that thread was, oh yeah, well, you know, that's where I'm gonna pepper spray or this or that. And so I would like, you know, one of the things I thought about even afterwards is in my mind, okay, I'm not an expert, you know, when somebody was pointing, you know, obviously the gun is pointed at me, it wouldn't have mattered, you know, in those situations if I'd had pepper spray. First of all, I would have put myself more in jeopardy because my pepper, I mean, you know, the gun is faster and they're further away than me with my pepper spray. um, you know, so it would be great for you to speak to that, you know, about the whole pepper spray or any of that. I will tell you, I was a terrible witness. I admit it. I could not, I think because so much of my energy was focused on remaining calm, I really had a hard time remembering what the suspects look like. I think for the, you know, when the gun was in front of me too, I was actually just staring at the gun instead of anything else. So yeah, unfortunately, I was a terrible witness.
So a couple of things. I think the problem is first of all, if you have a gun pointed at you, you're kind of in that's, you know, it's going to be hard to defend against that. You give them what they, you know, give them what they want. You know, these guys are mainly out for just getting money and jewelry and valuables and running out. As far as the pepper spray, what I worry about is a couple things. One is a lot of times it can be taken and used against you.
Mm-hmm.
So you get overpowered, that gets taken from
Mm-hmm.
you. A lot of times it doesn't even work, to
Mm-hmm.
tell you the truth about how this is. I mean, we use it on people and it's ineffective a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Then your other problem is if you're not thinking about wind direction, say you're not in the house, say you're in the backyard or something. If you're not thinking about wind direction, you're basically pepper spraying yourself because that wind is blowing, you know, in your direction. The other part of pepper spray is that you're likely, we're trained as officers to get pepper sprayed and try to do our job because we know that we pepper spray somebody, we're going to get it on ourselves and we have to be able to manage through it. So I just caution people thinking about pepper spray or tasers or different things like that, just so that those weapons aren't used against you. Not to say not to have them, but I've seen so many times that backfire. People just have to be mindful about that. And then Kelly, as you mentioned, that's a great lesson for everyone about making sure you're really good on descriptions. And I want to talk when we have opportunity, Patrick, about advice to give clients about security measures in their homes, but also, you know, my hope is that these listings that you have cameras and can capture what's going on as suspects enter or flee and all those sorts of things. But you know, I could be on here for hours. The bottom line is we all on this line need to know common sense. Common sense and your instincts are key. You use the word weirdo, Kelly. I don't know any other word either, but you see people and you just think yourself, the hair stand up on the back of your neck and you're like, nah, something's not right with this person. And, you know, as we deal with so much mentally ill and other folks, we just have to be very careful, use good common sense and have a good partner system.
To go back to the, I guess, self-defense weapons, or there's been a number of questions both sent over and in the Q&A box about pepper spray or concealed weapon. You know, I just go back to the thought that I have is like, what's the most important thing in this situation? The most important thing is that everyone possible gets out safely, and that there's no harm done. And, you know, in situations where if you're coming at someone, you know, you're taking out of your purse pepper spray, or, you know, that can easily turn, and then also escalate the situation. What Kelly did was de-escalate it, right? Escalating the situation. I mean, no one wants to be defenseless, but like, really, you don't want to make things worse than they are in the situation. And, you know, if you do something to somebody and it injures them, but you know, they can still come back at you, like they could be very angry and want the money, you know, versus just want the money.
That's right.
So there's that. And then there's at least one question about if you know, you did want to get a taser or whatever, do you have to be licensed?
Yeah, you don't have to be licensed for the taser, for the pepper spray. It's all legal. It's against the law to use those things in an offensive way, but in a defensive way, it's legal to protect yourself. But as you're mentioning, Patrick, we just have to be, you know, I see disaster stories about them being used against people. You got to run out and you have to use some common sense. And I wouldn't try to go hand to hand with people with weapons and things like that, with my own weapons going hand to hand, you know. Patrick, questions I see also, two questions, just I'm looking in the chat really quick. Talking about alarm system, press the emergency alarm. You know, pressing the emergency alarm is okay. It depends on, you know, it could take us a while to get there based on that alarm system. We have a lot of alarm calls. And then the other question about 911, the sooner the better. Yes, the sooner the better. Calling 911 immediately is so important. We're more apt to arrest, you know, apprehending the robbery suspect, the burglar, getting help, things like that. You know, need to call right away.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. Colleen asks, in an open house, would you suggest keeping the door locked and letting each party in personally rather than leaving the door unlocked, or even open so parties can just walk in on their own? So I guess the question is, you know, in an open house, go to the door each time, or, you know, have it open and people kind of flowing in.
I like that, and I think having the partner system will really help you kind of manage that door while you're trying. One partner's working with potential clients, the other partner's kind of managing that front door. Yeah, you could lock the door as long as that partner is managing that locked door. If you decide, okay, well, I'm just going to do this by myself and deal with the locked door, it's going to be problematic. As you know, you're trying to answer clients' questions, the doorbell's ringing, you're trying to evaluate, should I let this person in? You've kept the door locked. Now you've locked yourself in with other people who are looking at the house because you're doing this locking system. It sounds like a two-person assignment, and but someone has to stay on top of that door. I worry about people being locked in with other people if that door is not open.
Can I say one last thing? And if you can also speak to it, Deputy Chief, I'd really appreciate it. I think another thing that I at least noticed after my incident was, you know, there's a lot of people who want to know what neighborhood did it happen in, uh, trying to make some connection that crime only happens in certain neighborhoods and that it wouldn't happen somewhere else. And my experience, and even when I used to work in retail store management regarding, you know, when suspects would hit different stores, I mean, it's just fair game. It just, you know, especially I felt like if there was an opportunity, it wasn't as if, oh, they only go to this neighborhood. You know, I mean, you know, suspects and criminals have cars and they drive around. And so I felt like my situation was not indicative of a neighborhood. It's just indicative of the opportunity that presented itself, and that type of situation could present itself in another neighborhood that people might quote unquote deem it as, oh, it's a really safe neighborhood. And I know you probably know about crime that's happening all over the city that's in what people might deem as safe neighborhoods.
Yeah, Kelly, you hit the nail on the head. crime is happening all over San Francisco. It's not limited to this neighborhood or that neighborhood. Now, the percentages may be higher in other neighborhoods, especially violent crime, gun crime. I can talk a little bit about that. But if you're talking about, property crime, there is no place that is excluded from burglaries or auto burglaries in San Francisco. I don't care what street it's on. So, yeah, and yes, to your point, Kelly, these are crimes of opportunity where people are taking advantage of the situation, and they're all over the place. These burglars are out at night, and these robbery and burglary suspects are all over the place in the daytime as well in our city.
And I would think too, like if the smarter criminals, I mean, if I was a criminal, I would actually go to the places that have more potential of things that I could get. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's what you need to be mindful about as a realtor in your listings and the neighborhoods you're in, and thinking about, okay, I'm opening up this house to anybody potentially coming in. So I got to be mindful of that. And I know that everybody here talks with their clients about safeguarding valuables and putting photos away and all those sorts of things for that very reason. And, people are looking in closets, and so we have to be careful. And I think, you need to talk to all your clients about this kind of stuff, and talk to your clients about the safety precautions you're going to put in place during your open home appointments. And I think the clients would like to hear you talk about safety, your plan, and your partnered, and your 911 strategy, or, all that stuff. It may make them a little nervous a little bit, but it's part of getting the clients in there to see the house. So potential clients.
We have a question about a different type of crime, and that is, if an agent's targeted via a sexual assault. So it's a little bit different than an armed robbery that, maybe the suspect is, caging an open house for different reasons than robbing it. Any tips or proactive things? I mean, obviously working in pairs would be a big step there, but any others?
No, it's the same strategy. I would say it's the same strategy for robberies, for burglaries, sexual assaults, any type of crime. You're working in partnership. You have a plan. You have a safety plan. You and your partner discuss different scenarios. If this happens, if that happens, what are we going to do? When you go to the property and you're there and you're opening it up for the 1 to 4 showing, you have a conversation with your partner. Okay, look, if this goes bad, we're going to run out this door. We'll keep these doors open. We're going to call 911. I'll meet you in the front, and have those conversations. And especially if you have a condominium or something where there's only one way out. It's that door into the hallway. Well, that's why you definitely need to be partnered up. And I think it serves as a big deterrent, because as somebody who is thinking about a sexual assault or a robbery is going to walk in and say, "Oh wow, there's 2 of them here," and then be confident in your. And I know you're already confident because you're in the sales business, and you're like, "Hey, welcome, and come on in, and here's the flyer, and get something to eat," and all that stuff. But it's also really kind of being that way for someone who's suspicious. "Hey, how's it going? How can I help you? Hey, I like that green jacket and those blue jeans you're wearing today." You're telling them like I'm aware of what you're wearing. Like that's a deterrent. Somebody's going to say, "Oh, wow, they've already identified me. There's 2 people here. They're making eye contact with me. They're pretty confident. I don't think I can pull this off." It's the mindset of the criminal thinking about vulnerability. And if they could take advantage of you, they will. Or they could take advantage, then one person's kind of escorting them around. "I want to answer questions about this listing," while the other one's kind of holding ground. So it's hard to do it by yourself. That's my point for today. It's hard to do it by yourself.
We have another question from Lauren about, navigating a situation where there's potential mental illness or drug use. I'd probably say, how Kelly handled it, in the same type of manner. Don't escalate the situation. Don't, get into a situation where you're, pushing the potential buttons of these people to trigger, a response.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you do in that situation is you try once and you say, okay, sir, can I help you? Oh yeah, this home's for sale. Here, let me show you the door. Let me escort you out. Thanks for coming, but you're gonna have to leave. You try that once and you create a little distance too. You don't get close to people, a little time and distance, a little barrier between you and that person, between the couch and a couple things there. You ask them one time, they say they don't respond. They say no, then you're the one leaving. You're the one running out of that house, not them. They're staying. You're going out and you're getting on 911 and you're saying you're frightened. There's a person in the house. You're a realtor. You think they're mentally ill. You need the police here right away. You're not sure if they're armed. And you get the officers to come out and deal with that. And because at the end of the day, and you apologize to your clients, but at the end of the day, none of this is worth your safety. No listing is worth you trying to navigate this thing. And of course we're talking worst case scenario. Many of you probably been doing this job for years and have had no problems, but what if, or maybe it's not a matter of if, it's like when. You just have to be prepared. So you're always thinking safety and how you can be, your number one concern is your safety, that of your partner, and then the client's property, in my opinion.
One last, I guess I'll call it a comment, and then we're going to wrap up Kelly's portion of this, and then have the deputy chief kind of go more into, the other topics that we were going to talk about. Debbie Green said that she was mugged at gunpoint back in 2014 in a very safe neighborhood in San Francisco, and that she started to carry more cash on her to kind of satisfy would-be robbers in that situation. So it's not that they're interested in her, just kind of grab and go on. That's just another strategy that she brought up.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that, Patrick, just briefly, it's just as we're talking about inside these listings and you're having these open homes, it's the same concept on the street. You're walking down the street in a well-lit area. Hopefully you're with somebody. You may not be with somebody. But one of the things you're doing is you don't have your earbuds in, you don't have your iPhone out. Like, would you take out $1,000 in cash and walk around and fan yourself on a hot day? If the answer is no, then why do you have an iPhone out walking around looking at it? A very expensive iPhone. It's the same thing. It's still very, a lot of robbers like those iPhones. They go down to Market Street and they sell them. So, be aware of your surroundings. Take the earphones out of your ear. Don't be distracted. Look around. Who's in vehicles parked? Who's across the street? Who may be following you? Cross the street. Do those sorts of things. And be just aware of what's happening. Duck into a business if you have to. One strategy that I think works sometimes is if they think you have mental illness, they're going to avoid you. So maybe you act a little off, right? You start screaming, talking to yourself, talking about how they just took all your money, whatever, come up with something. The person focused on you is going to say, oh, wait a minute, they have mental illness or they have an issue. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going on to the next person. It's just like you're at an ATM machine. You see somebody coming up. That's when you press the cancel button and you start screaming about how they took all your money and there's no more money left. You have to be smarter than them, and you have to be street smart, and you have to be prepared so you're not victimized. And every time, most times we deal with victims, they're doing all those things. They never even saw it coming and they're not paying attention. I hope that answered your question, Patrick. I don't mean to go on, but
that was great. And this is why we're having this dialogue, right? Well, I want to thank very much Kelly Kwan for sharing your story, for being an advocate in here all the way through your trauma and on. I know it was a rough ride there for a bit, but thank you for coming full circle and sharing your story.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit now and ask Deputy Chief Lazar to just walk us through, what's happening in the city and, just, general, maybe some statistics and practical knowledge on how we can, protect listings, how we can keep them from being broken into. We've already talked a little bit about, agent crime prevention, but any tips there as well? If you could just kind of dialogue with us about that, and then we'll open it up to Q&A in about 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. And again, thank you, Patrick. Great questions. And I hope this is useful for everyone. I know how busy everyone is. Just a couple of things to be thinking about. You're in the real estate business, but you also need to be thinking in the crime prevention business, not for your clients, and for yourself and you as a homeowner and working with your clients. And I think about crime prevention through environmental design, SFPD. You may have heard of this concept before, crime prevention through environmental design. And what are the things that your clients need to be doing to remain safe? I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, during the post-pandemic, we had a burglary problem, but then through the pandemic, it just skyrocketed, where we have a burglary problem in San Francisco. And you may hear, oh, crime is down. And well, crime is down statistically. The cumulative, the total is down, but individually in different categories, crime is up. Burglary is one that is really up, 7,500 reported burglaries. I know that you know this because your clients tell you about it. And if you're in the city, you hear about it. So far, year to date, 3,366 was the statistic as of this morning, 3,366. That's reported burglaries. You can think about folks that don't report burglaries. So that's a 7% increase from last year. So we're on the trajectory right now to exceed 7,500. A lot of these burglaries are what we call hot prowl burglaries. People are home at night and they get into your garage, they get into your house. A lot of them are forced entry while you're home, sometimes while you're home, while you're not home. The popular burglary right now in San Francisco are the garage burglaries, where they're using some sort of tool or instrument to detach the latch in the garage. So they either break a small window and they use a coat hanger or some device to get to that latch, undo the latch in the emergency in the garage, the emergency release. They get the garage door open, they take bicycles. Bicycles are really a hot commodity right now in terms of burglaries. So when I talk about crime prevention through environmental design, it's really like, what can your clients do and what can you do to safeguard? So for me, for example, I live in San Francisco and a single family dwelling, detached on all sides. But I have a great camera system. I have 7 cameras that are up, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 2 on the sides, and 1 as you come in the front door, so that if the burglars come in that front door, there's a pretty good caption of them coming in. And I have all those cameras on my phone. It's on a recording 30-day loop. I'm even considering, just because I have to deal with this every day, having a license plate reader, an additional camera. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but capturing the plates of the vehicles that are on my block. The reason I tell you this is because the overwhelming majority of the cases that we make in San Francisco on crime is because of video evidence, the overwhelming majority. The Union Square area is flooded with like 345 cameras on buildings all throughout Union Square. And we're making the majority of our cases for several years now because of those cameras. So in my opinion, if you're a homeowner, you have cameras up and you're willing to download the information and hand it over to the police if we need it. And what we do with that, just so you know, is if there was a burglary today and it was captured on video, investigator will email it to 2,000 police officers in San Francisco. And about 8 times out of 10 within a week, an officer who works across the city will say, oh, I know that guy, that's so-and-so. And we're making cases that way. So video evidence is a big deal right now. And then other things to think about, I'm talking about myself, having a good alarm system, set it at night. So set it at stay at night so that if there's a window that's opened or something happens, the alarm goes off. I've just added lighting for the front and the sides, kind of that low voltage LED lighting. It helps me with the cameras at night and kind of stays on. And then are there, the other advice you give clients is, are there things around the property that that can either attract crime or can conceal burglars or other suspects. So for example, my neighbor had a bush. We just, the neighbor, anyway, we took the bush down and because people could hide behind it. And now we have I have this little couple foot fence that we put up instead. So I'm doing everything I can, knowing what I know, to try to deter folks from coming to my house and committing these burglaries. And those are some of the things that I suggest your folks do as well. The last quick couple things I'll say, watching the time, is so burglaries are up. Auto burglaries are staying consistent with last year, 7,334 reported auto burglaries year to date. We had 30,000 in 2017, 2018, thereabouts. But those numbers are going up as the city is beginning to populate again. And then robberies are down by 14%, but we still had nearly 1,000 robberies year to date, which is a lot. The other couple of things that you need to know about: motor vehicle theft is very popular. It's been consistent. Arsons, right? Lighting of fires, that's been consistent, about 150 year to date. And then the last thing I'll say is folks can say crime is down all they want. The other thing is that gun crime and violent crime is actually up. It's up in many major cities across America. San Francisco is no exception. Last year at this time, we probably had about 35 to 40 people who were shot. Right now, we're at about 100. And so we're doing some very strategic things in our department, in the police department, working collaboratively with other agencies to try to really bring those numbers down. I can talk more about that if you're curious. But we're doing a lot in that area to try to reduce the gun violence. And then we've had 19 homicides in San Francisco year to date, which is very low. We're actually, in the last 2 or 3 years, we're on like a 55 to 60 year all-time low in homicides, which is a good thing for our city. One homicide's one too many, but to have 19 for a major city, knock on wood, is a fairly low number. With that, Patrick, okay, whatever questions you may have, and hopefully some of this is resonating with folks.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and jump in to some questions, and they are a general variety. So we'll start with Dan, who's asking, there's a general perception that the police are not interested in preventing or discouraging or making arrests related to property and theft crimes. Is it true there's a policy not to make an arrest or investigate unless personal injuries are involved?
Okay, the answer to that is absolutely not. Absolutely not. So police officers are required to do their job. It doesn't matter what type of crime it is. What is their job? Their job is to investigate. Their job is to apprehend those responsible for crime within the parameters of law and policy. Their job is to be responsive, and their job is to really help people and take care of people. That's what they sign up to do. That's the message I promote to the folks that work for me, and do the best job they can. We can't control the entire criminal justice system. We can't control what happens in the courts. We can't control any of that stuff. But what we can control is to provide good service to people, just like you do. Good service to people, write a good police report, investigate crime, go the extra mile for people, make a difference in their lives. That's why you've signed up. So if anybody on this call ever feels like they're not getting the service they need, that's when they say to the officer, okay, can you please call your supervisor? Can you call your sergeant? Like, I feel like I'm not getting what I'm supposed to be getting. I want to talk to your boss. And we are prepared and ready and expect those calls from time to time. But, for officers to say, like, my number one pet peeve that drives me, that I don't like, when officers say, well, there's nothing I can do. Well, of course, there's always something you can do. Or when the officer may say, what would you like me to do? And when I talk to my officers, I say, well, do you go to the doctor and say, what would you like me to do? Do you expect the doctor to say to you, what would you like me to do? No, you're the doctor. I don't know. What should you do? It's the same thing with the officers. And I tell my officers, do not say that. Help people. So they should be preparing reports, and they should not be saying, well, it's only a property crime. Nothing's going to happen. Because that may not be true. And the last thing I'll say is that small little property crime where you wrote a report, that guy might commit a rape or murder next week. And we may make an identity, or we may make the case because that officer wrote a 1-paragraph report on a little something that was stolen. So no, no, no. Be responsive, do your job. That's my message for the officers.
Is it fair to say that there's a priority level similar to what dispatch is doing in regards to, addressing property concerns versus value of life concerns?
Yes. So, as mentioned, the in progress crimes, we're going to get out there, A priority call, B priority call. Because of the sheer volume of property crimes, especially auto burglaries, don't be disappointed when the dispatcher says, well, you can go file a report online because we have an online system, or please go to a police station and prepare a report. And the public gets upset. They say, well, my car got broken into and you're not even going to come out. Well, the answer is no. I mean, I don't know if folks know on this line, but we got a staffing problem in the San Francisco Police Department, and it's not getting any better. As a matter of fact, it's going to be worse by next month. A lot of folks are retiring at the end of this month, at the end of the fiscal year. We're working with the Board of Supervisors and the mayor's office. The mayor's been very supportive of our budget, and we have to have enough police officers to keep up with the demand in our city. And so don't be discouraged, and tell your clients and think to yourself, we want everything reported, because that gives us an idea about where to deploy resources and where crime is happening and where to address crime. And we hear about things, but we look at the data and say, well, the data doesn't add up. So yes, a lot of things are on, you can call 311, someone will take the report over the phone. Here in my office, I started something new where you get transferred to a live officer who over the phone will prepare the report. I'm trying something different for the sake of efficiency, but not everything will be a police response. A burglary should be, though. A burglary of a home should be.
Next question is from Tina. Deputy Chief Lazar, I'm a member of Alert. Under your leadership, do you think there is some kind of training seminar for realtors to take to protect themselves or visitors?
No, but this is about as close as we're going to get, having me online here with about 80 something people. But I'm always open to a workshop or getting other folks on my staff to come in and talk about specific topics. If that's something the Realtors Association is interested in, having, a couple of quarterly updates from the department on crime, safety, personal safety, more than happy to do it. I think it's a good idea. And I think in this day and age, we need to be thinking about that and talking about personal safety and crime prevention and all that. Again, you as a realtor, you're in the crime prevention business as well, in my opinion.
I spoke with An about this briefly, but I was wondering whether or not you think a realtor specific portal for reporting crime would be helpful. And what I mean by that is that maybe there's, we've had a number of break-ins, and that's actually going to the next question, that we'd like some help preventing those. But, just so that it was maybe easier to report, or that maybe that we as an association could train agents to, respond to these certain things. The big issue is, like, what if people aren't reporting, right? Or if they're not reporting that incident of a break-in, and then there's a string connected that if you would have known earlier could have been a preventative measure.
I think, Patrick, it may not be a bad idea to send out to all the members maybe a one-page document that says, in these circumstances, go to this portal, because we have the online reporting. You can go to our website and go to online reporting. So in these circumstances, go online, and in these circumstances, request a police officer to come to the residence and prepare a report. And really, because I think that you talk to the average person in San Francisco, they're not really sure who to call, what number. Is it 311? Is it 911? Is it the non-emergency? So, I can work with An, and we can put together something that you can push out that I think would be very helpful. I think one of the things to think about, burglaries, to me, residential burglaries do require a police officer to respond, because I would want that officer to do two things. One is canvass for video. Are there neighbors or others that have video of seeing the suspect? And the second thing to think about is evidence, forensic evidence, DNA, fingerprints, things like that. We often make cases because there's a drop of blood that's left, or there's a a fingerprint that's left. And we make a lot of cases off of DNA and off of latent prints. And that's why a police officer must respond to those calls. The last thing I'll say, Patrick, is, I mentioned to you about auto burglaries. Your car gets broken into. By the way, everyone knows in San Francisco, leave your car empty. You still may get your glass broken, but at least you didn't get your diamond ring taken. If you feel like there's evidence, like there's blood or a fingerprint or something, a police officer will respond to that call for that reason. If there's evidence involved, you will get an officer.
Okay. Helena asks if we can discuss protecting our vacant listings from getting broken into. I know there's been a string of appliance thefts. I know the big ticket appliances right now, there's people have been ordering a lot online, and manufacturing's backed up, and so they become more of a hot commodity to sell on the black market. So any for vacant listings where no one's living in, any thoughts or strategies around keeping those from being broken into?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. Some of the same things I mentioned earlier, where, why isn't there an alarm system on a house that's vacant? It's fairly inexpensive. That's one. Number two is, if it's my listing, I'm saying to the owners, okay, we're going to put your lights on timers, and that lamp's going off in the window at night, or the outside lighting is going to go on from dusk to dawn. And you're going to do some things to make the house look a little bit livable. I know that it's hard because people in the neighborhood will know that it's vacant, but burglars may not know that it's vacant because you're staging everything you can to make it look a little livable, whatever that looks like. Because, hopefully, I know it's not possible, but hopefully the house has cameras, alarm systems, and lighting and all that. But put lights on timers, and come up with some creative ways to think about, how do I make this house look like it's being occupied at the moment.
All right. I don't think this question is one you're going to be able to answer. I think it's more of a maybe a broker question. It says, Honey asks, is there any of these incidents on the property? What's the liability of the agent from the seller to the agent? I'm not sure we're able to speak on the liability there. I would say that's probably a broker. I took
the principal's course in 1990, so that gives you kind of an idea of what I may remember. So you may want to answer. One of your realtor brokers may want to answer that.
And it's weird, but that was more than 30 years ago. It's hard to believe that 1990 was more than 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Dan asks, we hear bickering back and forth between the DA and the police. The DA says they can only prosecute after an arrest is made, and the police say the problem is lack of prosecutions. As citizens, we are only interested in outcomes. If we report these crimes, will the police do anything?
The answer is yes, and we don't want to bicker with our DA partners. As a matter of fact, our members, our investigators, work really well with their counterparts in the DA's office to charge crimes and to, as we investigate cases, bring good cases to the DA's office. I completely agree with that question. And again, it goes back to me saying to the officers, we're going to do the best we can. How can we expect the DA's office to move forward on a case if the report is written in crayon? And, I'm just joking a little bit with that, but if it's not written well and the investigation's not done well and all that. So let's do the best job we can as police officers, and then work with the DA's office. And the DA will do whatever they do based on their charging criteria and things like that. And I know it's been a little bit public, the back and forth. But our chief is committed to be professional and for us to do the best job we can, control what we can control. And then that's the same for all of you. Like, preventing crime is the best thing. Arresting our way out of problems is not really going to work. What works is if we all, I say us, police department, realtors, the community, are all about how can we be smart in crime prevention. That's what brings the crime rate down, is preventing it in the first place. So that's really the key.
Our next question goes to what we were talking about earlier with, putting together maybe a form and a portal for reporting, or to direct agents to that. It says, to who and where do we report suspicious people and or activity, and what gets done after reporting it?
Okay, so that, if you feel like you're watching something and a crime is about to happen, for example, you're watching somebody looking in windows, or they're going down the street looking in every vehicle, to me, that's a call to 911. That's, we're probably on the heels of someone breaking into a house, or maybe they're going to commit a robbery, or they have a weapon, they're looking into cars, as mentioned. That's a call to 911. That's going back to being very specific about what you're seeing, very specific on a description. And then what that does is that gives the police officer reasonable suspicion that a person that has been reported on is involved in criminal activity. It gives us a right to make a detention on that person if necessary to investigate further. But if you're not that descriptive and you don't really know what you're seeing and you're not that articulate about it, it gives us less the opportunity to have a right to stop or detain somebody that's involved in a crime. And we're doing a lot of work in our department now around bias by proxy, meaning that the citizens calling in, seeing things that they may not be seeing, that's maybe because it's just about a person's race or something. So we're trying to be very mindful about that. We're not stopping people just because they're in a certain neighborhood and they're a certain race and all that. That is against the law. Like, we're not doing that. But what we do is we will do our jobs based on what you tell us. And that's why it's so important to call it in. It's important to be specific. I'm not sure if I answered your question, Patrick, but
I think that's helpful. And of course, San Francisco is one of the most diverse places in all Northern California. So
Yes.
having that bias training is much appreciated.
yes.
Mita asks, do you think outdoor signs such as premises under surveillance, dog, what have you, are quality preventative measures, or is it just one more thing that's helpful?
Yeah, I think it is helpful. If you go to my house, I got my nice little alarm sign in front. I got them in back. I just want to send a message to those who are thinking about burglarizing. Well, this one has an alarm, so maybe you're off to the next one. Not that I want you to be off to the next one, but it's not going to be this one, because this one has an alarm, and you're going to look up, you're going to say, wow, there's cameras here, and you're going to see, wow, there's some lighting here, and wow, there's nowhere to hide on this premise, because the big bush that's been there forever has been cut down, and now there's a little fence. Yeah, those are all the things that you need to do. I think, I think that the burglars are going to think twice when they see a little alarm sign. It doesn't have to be crazy big or anything, but when they see it, they know, okay, this is what I'm up against. Maybe I don't want to deal with this particular premise.
All right. Back in the 1990s, I myself was working in dispatch with AAA. And at the time, and I don't know, and goes to our next question, at the time, 911 calls on cell phones went directly to CHP. Is that still the case, or does the location or the area code of the cell phone predict where the 911 calling is going to?
Well, first, Patrick, I'm glad you went from 911 to 911, because we did a lot of community outreach on this, because people had trouble calling the police because they couldn't find the 11 button on the telephone. So fantastic. 911. The answer is that in the overwhelming majority of the time in the year 2021, that cell phone's going directly to our 911 dispatch center at 1011 Turk Street. However, there could be parts of the city near a freeway that automatically goes to CHP Vallejo. And we've been dealing with that for many years. And then Vallejo, you'll say, I'm in San Francisco, I have an emergency.
Relay.
They transfer you, yeah, right, immediately to 911 San Francisco. So just be prepared if that happens.
And then if someone calls on a landline, it's obviously going to go local.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And our anonymous attendee writes, Deputy Chief, can you speak to what the department is doing in terms of break-ins to steal appliances during sale period? Any tips? We kind of went over that a little bit already.
Yeah, we went over that a little bit already, and we just have to do everything we can to make the home look like it's occupied. And my whole spiel about the things you need to do for that.
Sabrina asks, do we know for these break-ins that are occurring that seem to be fairly well organized, are these outside influences, groups of people, gangs, are how are they organizing themselves, and how are they doing it so efficiently, essentially?
Yeah, there are groups of individuals right now. We have a list of our top 30 most prolific burglars that really haven't been spending too much time in jail. And that's probably the reason why they're so prolific, which goes to the whole solvability. If a person's in jail for 1 day, they're going to commit a bunch of burglaries. If they're in jail for 30 days, they're probably going to commit less because they're in jail for 30 days. That's a whole other, that's the next seminar I'll participate in with you. But so they're out, they're organized. There's groups of them. We know many of them. And their deal is they go around in the middle of the night with their backpacks and their mask and their caps, and even with cameras makes it challenging, but sometimes we are able to figure it out. And that's what they do. And they have their burglary tools. And, I saw one in Pacific Heights, a video the other day where, the guy's got a drill, and the drill bit's the size of a socket. And he's drilling a nice hole into this, very expensive garage in Pacific Heights. And then he's fishing in his little wire, and he's pulling on the hook of the garage, and up goes the garage in the middle of the night. No alarm system on that garage, which why wouldn't you have an alarm go off when the garage opens? And then, off with a couple bikes he goes, very expensive bikes. Every single day in San Francisco, that's happening. So that's mainly who's doing the burglaries. But we have a lot of burglars actually beyond the 30, and it's very prevalent, as mentioned.
Is there a process or an application in place for texting 911?
Yes, we actually have a texting. I'm glad you brought that up. I would have missed it. We have a couple things. We have a text to tip under a 411 text to tip that we'll put, that Ann and I will put on this sheet. And then we have a 911 texting ability. And when you think about open homes, I'm glad you brought it up. We would have hung up today and I would have missed a really big point for the partner realtors that are working a listing. Ann and I will make sure that we put that information on. You plug that into your phone, texting into 911. Yeah, we have that technology. So,
and does that, depending on where you are, it will go to San Francisco Dispatch?
Yeah, San Francisco Dispatch, and then you'll have to describe what's going on, but you can do it all by text. One of the popular things happens is somebody's riding a minibus, and they're on the bus and they're texting because they don't want to pick up the phone and report what's going on around them and that sort of thing. So yeah, we do have that technology, and we'll put that on the sheet.
Couple more questions. We have about 2 or 3 more minutes. Any sense on why the rise in burglaries, or are your stats saying that there's an increase? And if so, just, is it opportunistic? Is it, what is it that's driving that?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think it's very opportunistic, especially during the pandemic, which was kind of mind-boggling because most people were home, and then there were still these burglaries that were taking place. I think some of the individuals that are committing these offenses get out of jail quickly. And by them getting out, as mentioned earlier, as they get out of jail quickly, kind of gets them back into the burglary cycle. And I think, there's a few things that are taking place within the confines of the criminal justice system that are, as they're property crimes, they're not violent crime, that enables folks to continue to commit these burglaries over and over and over again. And that's why I made the comment about arresting our way out of this situation. It's not like somebody gets caught for burglary, going to spend a lot of time in jail. So then we have to think, okay, well, how can we prevent it and be smarter than them in their strategy to take items out of a house or a car or what have you. But that's primarily what's happening there.
The background on there being fewer beat cops, is that because there's, less in the force? I mean, it sounds like you are still in the process of, getting your, or not getting your force up, but maintaining the force numbers. Yes. So yeah. If those rise, then beat cops would come back in a more prolific way? Okay.
Yes, and let me just speak to that really quick, and I'm watching the clock. I know we have about a minute. That's the support we could use from San Francisco Realtors is really, as we in budget season, as we move forward, having enough police officers to do the work. In my opinion, we're short about 150, 200 police officers right now, and we're not hiring them in time. We're not hiring enough to keep up with attrition. I think if you get me on this Zoom in about a year or two, I'm going to be telling you it's a lot worse than it was in 2021. And, a foot beat and a bicycle beat and having that visibility is a luxury. The first primary thing we do is put officers in patrol cars to respond to 911 calls. After that, then we can have foot beat officers, et cetera. So that's my concern, is really having the support at the board of supervisors and having enough support so that we can hire enough officers to keep up. The city's opening up, pandemic's slowing down, high rises, more housing, more buildings are being built. We're gonna have that demand for services, and we should look to see if everything deserves a police officer. Can other things be done by other agencies? But at the end of the day, burglaries, robberies, crime, public safety, that's our business, and we need to have enough officers to do that work.
Yeah, and training an officer isn't like training an Amazon employee. It's not like, you're going to start in 2 weeks. You have to go through probably at least a year or two.
Yes.
Process, background checks, training, academy.
Yeah, Patrick, it's about a 6 month to a year process to get a job. 1 out of every 10 approximately get hired. They get disqualified. They go through an 8-month police academy, another 4 months of field training, a year of probation. And that's why I'm saying if we hired you today, Patrick, I'm sure you'd be great, but you're really not up and running for 2 years. So that's the problem. And we have been hiring classes of 30, which about 23 graduate, and then about 17 make it at the end. And for a big police department like ours, it's a drop in the bucket. And we definitely need the funding and support to hire enough people to do this job for the sake of our city and for the work that you do.
All right. Well, I would just like to thank you on behalf of the association for taking so much time with us today and really offering some great insights. I know that you and An and I will work on a 1-pager and some tips heading out over the next couple months and into the summer. And Kelly Kwan, thank you again for sharing your time and your experience with us and being brave enough to do so. So thank you all, and have a great summer.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Take care.